back to the auditory system, and we are going to finish the sound localization issue. Last lesson we talked about, we're still with the auditory system. I will continue today, finish today. And on Wednesday we have Eli Melken talking about cortical coding. And then we have a break on Sunday. There was a holiday. And the following Wednesday, Eli will continue 1 hour. And then we have one talk of one of you. Who? You? Okay, the fMRI study. Okay. And then last one is another session, and that's it. Great. Okay, so last time we talked about how we use different cues of sound from the horizontal plane to determine cues from sound in different places in the environment to determine where they are. This is called sound localization. And we talked about neurons in the LSO, which establish a rate code for sound source localization. And we saw that they have this ipsilateral preference, and these are called EI neurons because they receive both excitation and both in ipsilateral excitation and contralateral inhibition, and they have this preference. And this way we can decide by rate code where exactly the stimulus is. This is only one type of information. Okay, we talked about two different types of information that sounds from different places in the horizontal plane in the world supply us. Okay, we are not going to talk about elevation at all. So this is the last slide I left you last lesson. Okay. The second nucleus, brainstem nucleus that encodes information of interoral time differences. We also talked about this on the first lesson, that neurons in the spiral ganglion cells and then neurons in the cochlear nucleus are very good at phase logging, spiking when the phase of the sound is at different times of the phase, and therefore they can maintain very good and accurate temporal information. This is extremely important, and this is where this property of these neurons comes about. And the information that encodes or starts to encode space information based on interoral time differences, when the sound comes at different times to the different ears. And this will be, you remember, maximum when we're at 90 degrees, and we'll go closer and closer to 0 when it's straight up or in the back of us. And these neurons are located here in the medial superior olive. Okay, initially we talked about the lateral superior olive, encoding information about intensity, and now we're talking about interoral time differences. Okay, you seem to me a little bit shaky. Okay, everybody is on? Is there anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about? Auditory system needs to localize sounds in space. We use level differences. We talked about that. You know everything about it. And now we're going to talk about interoral time differences. And this is calculated initially at the MSO with a beautiful, beautiful mechanism. This mechanism is a coincidence detection mechanism, which was proposed by Jeffreys, which is called, therefore is called the Jeffreys model. And it is, to date, the widely accepted model for low frequency sound localization. Okay, and what is the idea of this model? The idea is that neurons in the MSO, medial superior olive, these neurons receive information directly from the neurons in the cochlear nucleus, the second stage of sensory coding in the auditory system, and they receive direct input from these cochlear nucleus neurons. From the left ear, axons coming from the cochlear nucleus, okay, so the cochlea, spiral ganglion cells, in the cochlear nucleus, and these guys send axons to these different neurons. The hypothesis is that these neurons first send their axons. There's a collateral axon synapsing here, and then another axon synapsing here, etc., etc., etc. And therefore, these by axonal wiring, we are causing a delay line. So this neuron will get input first, and this neuron will get input last from the left ear. The same picture emerges from the right ear. Okay, and therefore you have these delay lines that come from the right ear. Of course, they first synapse on the last neuron. What? Because they come from different places. Okay, this is the nucleus. These axons come from the bottom. These axons come from the top, and they send their collaterals first onto this neuron. So just based on the axonal design, the anatomy of the system, and the axon wires, we are performing these delay lines of inputs, and these MSO neurons are thought to be coincidence detectors. So they will spike only when the input arrives simultaneously from the left and the right ear, from this axon and this axon. Okay, this is an hypothesis, a model. Great. So the idea is that if you record now, let's say, from input coming from the front, from the right, sorry. Okay, there was actually an animation here. If you're quiet, you will hear. Okay, there's a beep coming from the right. It will hit the right ear first, and therefore get excitation in the cochlea and cochlear nerve initially. Okay, the spike will travel along the axon first. Actually, this is coming left, so it doesn't really matter. Okay, whereas this will just determine the direction of the map. But let's say axon comes here first. Okay, then it will hit the left ear. The left ear will start to travel right here, and this neuron will spike. But this one will be most sensitive to an interoral time difference, which is not zero. Okay? So the peak spiking of this neuron, this red neuron, will be shifted to the contralateral side. In this case, under the assumption this is the left MSO. Okay? We know that input is coming faster from the left side, to the left MSO. Therefore, these guys will come normally first. Okay? If they start at the same time, this will come first. And this thing has to catch up. But if the input to the right ear comes first, then this guy will come right on time to hit the same neuron at the same time. And what we are constructing, one sec, for each neuron, like I told you, you can do it very carefully in the auditory system. You can put very sensitive earphones in the two different ears and run an experiment where you manipulate the ITD, the interoral time difference, very accurately. Okay? So this is called an ITD tuning curve. And if you do it to this particular neuron, okay, you start with an ITD where it starts from the left, and then at 0, and then coming from the contralateral side, you will construct an ITD tuning curve. And this means that this neuron, this particular neuron, is sensitive not to input coming from the front of the animal, ITD0, but rather to input coming from the contralateral side with an ITD of, I don't know, X microseconds. And because of the phase locking activity of the cells, this can be faster than a millisecond, and this is faster than a millisecond. This way, the nervous system can encode, by comparison, comparing the two different channels of information, can code in a faster rate than an action potential. Yes?
Was this confirmed by electrophysiology?
Of course. Let's start. Okay? So this is called the Jeffers model. You have a question?
Yeah. If you play with the headphones,
long time signal.
The brain should know it's different signal at all, right? It's not that same signal was just coming from one side of the head.
So this, I'm not sure I completely understand you, but one piece of information for you is that in fact these neurons do not encode pure time differences, but rather phase differences. Okay? So if you're going to start an input from 1 year and then wait for a long delay, so there's going to be something in the first time point. Okay? It can come at a very, very long delay, but if it's a very different sound, it depends where their phase is. And these neurons actually fire because of the phase quality we talked about the last time. They will fire within a given phase difference, okay, between the two inputs. So your question is relevant only to the first spike or something like that. Okay, let's look at another neuron in the MSO. Okay, or another situation. This was now the same sound coming from the front now, which means that ITD is 0. Voila. Then the information will come simultaneously from the left and the right cochlear nucleus at the same time, and this neuron will be tuned to an ITD 0. So its peak will be exactly at 0. Okay, so that's the hypothesis, that we're going to have an ITD tuning of these neurons in the MSO, which are one of the first stations that get information for both ears. So they're converging information from left and right ears. Great. Any questions?
Can you please repeat how time locking making the speed of processing better than single spike?
Oh yeah, we talked about this last lesson. If you use the population of cells, let's say you have 1 kilohertz sound, okay, and you look at the spikes. Let's say it's a 2 kilohertz spike. And because of the biophysical properties of the neurons, they cannot spike at this high rate, okay? But they will spike, at a given phase of the sound stimulus. So let's say here, they will miss a few cycles, then they will spike here. Okay, this neuron. Good? This is the spiral ganglion cells. Another neuron will also spike, here, here. I don't know, maybe miss a few, whatever. The third neuron will spike here, here, and here. If you look at the population of cells, you will get an inter-spike interval which is less than a millisecond. Okay, in this case, 500 milliseconds, 500 microseconds. Sorry. If you look at the population, you can account for this, and this is a critical phenomenon. Both from hair cells, we saw that the membrane potential can follow the low frequencies. In humans and mammals in general, it's only low frequencies, and we'll talk about it.
So is that random?
What?
Is it one neuron that always fires at the same time?
No, different neurons along the cochlea will spike at different frequencies.
Right, but if you look at one of these neurons in the population, does it always fire at the same moment?
Not at the same moment. They will collectively fire differently. We talked about this last time. We have like 10 to 20 spiral ganglion cells synapsing on one hair cell. This hair cell changes its membrane potential, and it can follow the frequency of the sound based on the membrane potential. We had an AC/DC slide, okay, up to, let's say, 1 or 2 kilohertz. But the spiral ganglion cells synapsing on them will receive the synaptic input, and they too can follow with spikes the phase locking activity of this cell. Okay. So we have neurons which are tuned to ITDs, and generally speaking, if you now, so this is very similar to the cartoon to what I showed you last time, with the lateral superior olive, but now the medial superior olive, the MSO. So we're looking at spiking activity of this neuron. And if a sound comes from the front with a 0 delay, it will hit both ears at the same time. This is the outer ear, the cochlea. Spiral ganglion cells will synapse onto these bushy cells, they will send an axon to the MSO. Let's say this is the MSO from the left side. Stimulus was hit exactly at the same time, so the activity of the spiral ganglion cells will be exactly the same from both sides. Okay? But because of axonal wiring, this guy on the left ear in this case has a head start, okay? Because he's closer, physically closer to the cochlear nucleus, and therefore he will arrive earlier to the MSO. And because these are EE neurons, excitatory coincident detectors, they will not spike. So normally this neuron will not spike at all. This particular neuron has 0 ITDs. Great. Now, okay, why? This is because again the head start. Okay, so the idea is that because of the connectivity gives a head start to the ipsilateral sound, they're not detected by the coincidence detector. They come too early to hit the MSO. However, when contralateral sides comes a little bit later, he makes up for this deficit in the competition to hit the MSO at the same time. And therefore, when he comes at a little bit slight delay, okay, so let's now say that, look at the left MSO and have the sound coming from the right hand side like we saw before, okay? It will come earlier in the right side. It has a little bit longer distance to travel, so it will come a little bit later to hit the MSO. The sound coming from the left ear comes faster, but because of this delay, actually, in this case, a 300 microsecond delay, again, faster than an action potential, it will increase the coincidence, and therefore the MSO neuron will spike now. And this neuron, specifically this one, will have an ITD of 300 microseconds. Yes.
So there's just one MSO, and in the one MSO there are many neurons with different ITDs.
Different ITDs, absolutely. That was the idea. Okay, so basically the idea, if we go back, is that neurons in the MSO will be sensitive to different ITDs. Okay? And the nice thing about that is essentially you transform information from the environment into an actual map in the brain. Great. So you know that if sound comes, if this neuron hits, if I'm a decoder on this network, I know if this neuron is spiking the most, I know that the sound is coming from the front. And here it's coming from the contralateral side. In fact, most neurons in the MSO there is a skewness to contralateral side inputs. This was the point of these slides. Okay? So when input comes from the contralateral side, you will see most of the neurons are tuned to ITD, a little bit negative, but most of them there's some skewness to the contralateral side. Okay? So if you see a neuron which is tuned with a positive ITD, you know it's encoding information from the contralateral side. Okay, that's the convention. Okay, so this basically summarizes what I told you. A neuron, of course, that will be tuned at ITD0 will spike in the first case, okay, when both sounds come at the same time. And finally, like you mentioned, you want some household proof. And indeed, when you record in different animals, this is data from the cat. Note the x-axis here, microseconds. You see, indeed, that this neuron has its peak at an ITD. In this case, it's, I don't know, 200 microseconds or so, maybe a 100 microsecond ITD. And if you go away from ITD0 to both sides, you get fewer and fewer spikes. But remarkably, I told you that this is a phase locking, a property that arises from the phase locking. So if you go one phase apart, in this case it's a 1 kilohertz tone, meaning that answered earlier, that these neurons actually encode phase differences and not, the absolute, the first hit of the sound. Okay? In R, we play two different sounds, and they hit the two different, will respond to the different phases of the sound. Of course, this creates a confusion, of course, right? Because if I'm a decoder looking at this neuron, I don't know if it comes with an ITD of 100 microseconds or 1,100 microseconds or 2,200 microseconds or minus, etc. Okay? So this was the first proof when you recorded a neuron from the MSO, which are nicely tuned to specific inter-OAS delays at the microsecond resolution. Okay, so this is the peak of the response. That would be the ITD, preferred ITD of this cell. But as I mentioned, you see this recurring tuning based on the waveform, which is related directly to the frequency of the cell. Yeah.
ITDs more than 1 second, are they at all biologically plausible?
Good eye and the good observation. We'll talk about that a little bit later.
1 millisecond is pretty long, and like the sound traveling from one side of the head to the other side of the head.
Okay, he's quick, huh? He saw the light. So when we talked initially, good. 5 נקודות. Okay, so last time when we started this lesson, we talked about, that it depends on the size of the head. And for a human being with a 20 centimeter head, a sound coming from the right-hand side will hit the maximum, okay? The maximum ITD that I expect is 600 microseconds, right? Okay, so anything beyond 600 microseconds is not physiological, that's all. But nevertheless, when you record from these cells, sorry, so like I said, most of what we are referring to is within the range of about up to 600 microseconds. Of course, the closer you get to ITD, the closer you get to the center of the gaze, and in fact, the higher resolution of ITDs is around the zero with some skew to the contralateral side. But it's true that if a tuning comes later on, it means nothing. Okay? In reality it won't come in. But of course, if the phase is as such, the neuron will spike as well. And this creates a bias, a problem, although physiologically it's irrelevant. But we'll see how we get rid of this. Okay? Because we expect that this type of behavior of the cells is highly dependent on the frequency. Right? You all with me? The ITD of the cell, or it will peak around zero, doesn't depend on the frequency per se. It depends on when the ears hit the cochlea, phase blocking, axons from CM, etc. However, these peaks highly depend on the frequency. And indeed, if you record from the same neuron at different frequencies, you can see that the ITD peak tuning around zero is the same, but you can find that it changes starting from the second phase on of the wave. You can see that although the ITD of this neuron is 600 microseconds in this case, which would be the maximal for a human head size, if you will, you see that these shift with the frequency. So if you change the frequency of the sounds that are coming in, you won't change the ITD because this is the center of the hitting the center of the tuning of the cell, but this will change in the later frequencies that will come in later. Okay? Great. Okay, so therefore, to summarize, the brain transforms the relative timing of information from both ears into a place code in the MSO. This is a map of ITD. This is called the Jeffreys model. This is the most common model that you will find in all textbooks that you will read. Great. And we will continue to talk about it. Let's summarize. Okay? I just want to tell you where we are, just to remind you in the hierarchy. Okay? We started with the cochlea. Talked a little bit about the cochlear nucleus. We're now in the nuclei in the brainstem, in the supraolivary nucleus. We talked about two nuclei. The LSO, looking at intensity differences. Neurons in the LSO are what we call EI, getting both excitation and inhibition. And now we talked about the neurons in the MSO, which is another nucleus that calculates intraoral time difference. Great. So let's summarize this part and look at connectivity ahead. So these are the cochlear nuclei, okay, receiving the axons from the spiral ganglion cells. And on each side of the brain you have an MSO and LSO. MNTB is a source where you remember the inhibitory neurons. Synapse on the LSO neurons. Therefore, these neurons receive excitatory, inhibitory. These guys receive excitatory, excitatory. This is what we talked about. Okay? These neurons they prefer ipsilateral or contralateral. Ipsilateral. These guys prefer contralateral. Interestingly enough, so input, for example, the MSO, this is what we talked about now. MSO neurons will send their axons into the inferior colliculus, which is the next station up. Okay? LSO neurons, interestingly, will send their axons to the contralateral side and will cross in the brain. Okay? Sorry. They will cross the information from the brain. Okay? And therefore, the real convergence of information based on the contralateral ipsilateral information is done at the inferior colliculus. So this is where the information of the brain crosses. So to summarize, for the third time, so it's soft and easy. MSO neurons respond best to sounds that occur earlier in the contralateral ear. This is what we talked about right now. LSO neurons represent the ipsilateral ear, but space representation is crossed, and therefore LSO projects mostly to the contralateral, while MSO to the ipsilateral. This summarizes this information. There are other inhibitory inputs from the LSO to the IC. We won't talk about these at all. So actually I should erase that. And from NMTB to MSO, we won't talk about this. Okay, the Jeffreys model has been really solidly explained and beautifully shown in this animal, which is the barn owl. It's quite an incredible animal. It's what we call a binaural specialist. Okay, this guy can hunt in full darkness. Let's see some movies. I like to show movies, right? You already know this from National Geographic. We need some sounds, right? Yeah, that's from my computer. want the commercials?
Yeah.
No? I don't mind, I don't mind. Ah, that's why, because you're cold.
עיניו טכנולוגיות קירור, טכנולוגיות מתקדמות לטיפול באוויר.
Everything about the way an owl looks, the reason an owl looks like an owl, is all to do with acoustic adaptations. In other words, adaptations for hearing. One of the most obvious ones is this circle of feathers around both sides of the head. Actually, this is one parabola to collect sound for this ear, and this is another parabola to collect sound for that ear, which is actually very much like cupping your hand behind your ear as a means of collecting more sound. And you can also see another peculiar thing. Owls sit with their bills pointed down like this, looking at the world. The reason they do is to maximize the surface area over which they can collect sound. If this was a robin or some other bird, songbird, the bill would be held roughly horizontally like that. But no, they tilt it way down. And the reason they do that is because this dimension of the head is greater than that dimension of the head. That whole posture is part of why an owl looks like an owl.
The barn owl locates the direction of a sound in two ways. When the mouse makes a noise, the sound reaches one ear a fraction of a second before it arrives at the other. This minute time difference enables the owl to work out the left-right direction of the mouse. When the mouse is directly in front of the owl, the sound arrives at both ears at exactly the same time. Now it has to calculate if the mouse is above or below.
If you cut just that collection of feathers in the very center here that help the air flow by smoothly, then you get what we've done here to this owl, which is a stuffed owl that's had just those feathers removed, nothing else. So right here you can see that there are two flaps of skin, and those flaps are directly in front of the ear opening. Ear opening is back here. But they're asymmetrically placed. One is higher than the other one. This one is actually lower than that one.
These asymmetric flaps gather the sound from the mouse in different ways. The noise of rustling leaves comes from below the owl. The sound passes under the high flap, which is on the left side of the owl's head, and is reflected by the ruff into the ear. The low flap on the right side deflects the sound coming from below. When the sound is louder in the left than the right ear, the owl knows it's coming from below. By combining the up-down with the left-right information, it pinpoints the mouse with great precision.
Hey guys, I'm here with Mark from Abs After 40 today. He's the #1 most subscribed trainer on YouTube. Even better,
I apologize. I have to download these movies, I think. The easiest. Okay, anyway. So, the barn owl is a binaural specialist. It's amazing in hunting at night. And it has other qualities. First and foremost, it uses high frequency sound. Unlike humans, if you do psychophysical tests for us, we are not very good at locating, based on ITDs, with high frequency sounds. You remember? The duplex theory we talked about last time, which uses intensity for high frequencies and ITDs as low frequencies. So we are good at low frequencies. Barn owls do ITDs at high frequencies. And in fact, if you record from their auditory nerves, their neurons can also lock at these high frequencies. Unlike mammals that cannot phase lock at these high frequencies. You remember the ACDC? We fell down at 2 kilohertz. All of this becomes critically important for the explanation of how does the animal, or how does the brain extract this ITD information. Okay, so we found, if you record from the barn owl, you find neurons with big Fs over 2 kilohertz that can phase lock nicely and that have the ITDs, okay? And ITD tuning is in the range of 200 microseconds, most of the neurons, which means that it fits the physiology of the head of the owl. So, like you were worried that, what does the 1 millisecond delay mean? In this case, most ITDs are within the plus minus 200 microseconds. So this is good news, okay? In addition, if you do the anatomy of the MSO, okay, you see beautifully these axons, in this case in green, coming from one side of the MSO. These are the neurons in the MSO. They line here beautifully in a nice line, and actually they have dendrites going to two different sides. Okay, so they have a dendritic alveolization on this side and dendritic alveolization on the other side. And axons coming from the other side, like you saw in the cartoon I showed you, synapsing on these dendrites. And here, the axons coming here are making synapses on these dendrites, and this is nicely oriented along these delay lines, if you will. Okay? And so the anatomy is perfectly built to be a coincidence detector. There's beautiful anatomy from the 80s showing these nice MSO neurons. They're tiny. They have these nice dendrites, not very big like the pyramidal neurons you are used to see from Dan Seger in the cortex, but these small bushy dendrites and axons coming from one cortical cochlear nucleus makes synapses here, the other one from the other cochlear nucleus makes synapses here, and these guys are aligned like the coincidence detector. Okay? So although the Jeffries model was thought about by a smart person before we have any anatomy and physiology, the anatomy supports it as well. And in addition, the neurons that are tuned to ITD. But Houston, we have a problem. Okay? One problem has been alluded already to. That is, what is the meaning of frequencies that come in at multiple cycles? And in fact, in the barn owl, because the size of the head is quite small, 5, 10 centimeters or so, and he can phase lock at high frequency, it means that within a reasonable physiological range of ITDs, which we accept from the animal, he will get multiple cycles coming in. So these neurons can be confused, and this is relevant information in the barn. And this is because he uses high frequency phase locking or high frequency sounds to extract information from the horizontal plane. In mammals, however, we use low frequency sounds. And if you look at the animals that people recorded from, you find that the tuning of ITDs is quite wide. And there's no expectation of a second cycle coming in at the relevant physiological range, encoding using low frequency sound to encode ITD.
In the human ITD plot, we've seen that the central maxima is higher than the others. A bit.
In the human?
Few cycles ago.
Not sure
Not
it's
human,
human,
not
but
human. It was the...
We had cat, we had gerbil.
Okay, okay. So the main was higher. So maybe it could...
No, the question is what is the physiological range of ITD?
Maybe if you scan your area...
No, so the recording that were done in a gerbil, the gerbil is very small, very tiny, okay, it's like a mouse. And you record from the gerbil, and you expect ITDs in real life physiology to be plus minus 150 microseconds. But we found, or people find, that they're ITD, best ITD, the peak ITD, it is at 600 microseconds. This is now scaled to the physiological range of the animal. And this depends on the frequency. This is critically important, okay? Because gerbils use low frequency sounds to locate where they are in space. This is because the biophysics of the neurons in the hair cells, in the superior ganglion cells, etc., they can phase lock only up to 1 kilohertz or 2 kilohertz maximum. It means that they use low frequency sounds to locate in space. But if you look at the physiological ranges, it means that there's going to be one cycle and the tuning curve will be rather shallow. In barn owls, the Jeffers model holds very, very well, but we have a problem, like you said. Okay, we'll see how we take this problem out. Yeah.
What kind of range do we have?
What? Up to 600 microseconds. Okay, that's the maximum that we can go.
No, I mean, what frequency do
We use low frequency.
we use? So we can't know if we have high frequency sounds where they come from.
No, high frequency sounds, they introduce different in levels.
Level, yes.
Okay? So this was the slide number 2 here, or 3, after the human and the bird. Okay? Great. Okay. So, for the bird, which uses high frequency sounds, we expect multiple cycles of the stimulus to reach the near ear before it arrives to the far ear. This is solved by having an ITD map orthogonal to the tonotopic map where frequency dependent side peaks cancel. Hard one, huh? Okay. So these are the delay lines that we talked about. These are the neurons in the MSO, nicely organized with the 2 dendrites in the left and right, receiving input from the contralateral and ipsilateral line. Okay, that's each one is a delay line that we were talking about. Now, these neurons are organized tonotopically in the MSO. In the bird, it's called the nucleus laminalis. Okay, it's the equivalent of the MSO. And the idea here is that these ITD small maps are organized orthogonal to the tonotopic map. And therefore, each frequency has a full maps of ITD. Okay? And when these different frequencies will send their axons to the next station, to the inferior colliculus, the sidebands here, okay, will be cancelled out. So a neuron from a decoder from the next station looking at the MSO will receive this kind of tuning from one frequency. Okay, we saw it before, they will lock here. The other, if the sound comes at another frequency from the same source in space, he will lock in the center at the same spot, but the other cycles of this frequency will be offset relative to the other frequency, etc., etc., etc. Okay? But if this one is also collecting information from all, so let's say this neuron, and this neuron, representing different frequencies along the tonotopic map, they will have the same ITD, right? Although they are different frequencies. And they will send their axon to the next station, which will then be responsive at the peak ITD. So neurons at the next station, we call them true ITD. Great. Okay. So, and this is thought to be solved by this two orthogonal maps. So this is beautiful maps. So the first map is the map of tonotopy, which we saw already in the cochlea, and we saw in the cochlear nucleus, etc. You just turned on the air conditioning again, Tal? They asked to close it. Okay, you'll have a fight in the recess. Yeah, I saw you falling asleep. So while you were asleep, we were asking them. No, not for long, just for the argument, for the discussion. Okay, anyway, so we have two maps. Okay, the tonotopic map which you know everything about from the cochlea, you already know it. And now we have a new map of ITDs, which is orthogonal to the tones of the brain. A beautiful solution of the brain to solve the problem of these multiple cycles that you were worried about, okay, which is an important problem in Barnhouse. The other problem, which is a little bit more complicated, is that we are using, or mammals are using, low frequencies, and therefore their ITD tuning is shallow. And we don't expect much differences in their peak activity around the relevant ITD. So if you're a gerbil or a mouse, and you need to localize space, to localize a sound based on ITDs, your peak tuning will be not change much within the physiological range, which is roughly 150, 180 microseconds. Okay? And indeed, when you look at the literature, there are very clear differences between recordings from barn owls to recordings from gerbils. Yes?
So gerbils and other mammals don't have cells in the mass?
Okay. So now, because most of the data that we have comes from barn owls, this is amazing papers from the beginning of the 80s, largely Eric Knudsen and others, largely Eric Knudsen from Stanford. This was like the bon ton, the classical thing. But when people started to record from mammals, they saw different things. One thing is that they saw, one is that the maps are not orthogonal. I didn't talk about it, but in barn owls there is anatomical evidence that neurons with the same, you can see a column of neurons with the same DF, the same tonotopic, within the same tonotopic niche, that have different ITDs. So there is evidence for these orthogonal maps, and here there's no, okay, not orthogonal, okay, so there's no evidence that these maps are orthogonal in gerbils, in mammals.
The neurons that react to different frequencies go to the same.
Yeah, okay. So I'm just now challenging you. Okay? So one, we don't find the map, so there's no anatomical support. And in fact, when you record ITDs, they're too large. This is the physiological range shown here in gray, but most of the ITDs are outside the range of the true ITDs. So the whole, 90 degrees starts here and ends here. But the ITDs are tuned outside this range. This is very peculiar. Okay, so this raised some eyebrows. This is also independent of head size. So if you record from chinchilla, cat, gerbil, etc., you don't see that it obeys the same rules. So ITDs do not overlap nicely with the physiological range. Moreover, also first, another thing is that you see ITDs which are very different at different frequencies, which you don't see in the barn owl. Okay, so this is another evidence for this differences. You also see it here. Each line is a different frequency, actually taken from this distribution, and you see that the ITDs are different and outside the physiological range. Okay. Moreover, a very strong paper in Nature in 2002 showed that these neurons are not, the neurons in MSO are not true EE. They also have robust inhibition in the circuit. And if you take out the inhibition, they all lock on at ITD 0. So this is with inhibition, and inhibition is a very important factor in shaping the ITDs of these cells. So the story is different in mammals. So because we don't have a long time, I wanted to open this to discussion for you to think about the solution, but never mind. The idea is, and you can read about it in this nice review, it's important, again, also for the exam, etc. This is about a very important issue. So this is the new, or the different view on ITD, which is different than the Jeffries model. The neurons in the MSO, actually, their peak of their activity falls within the range. Not the peak activity, the peak of the slope of their tuning curve falls within the physiological range. And the theory now is, or the new theory for phase locking, or for extracting spatial information from ITDs, in mammals, it's thought that it is not a space code, it's not a map, but it's rather a rate code with hemispheres hemispheric ITD. So neurons that are tuned to the whole hemisphere, and we're comparing the IC, and the next station is comparing what's happening in the left and the right hemisphere. And input which is moving in the contralateral hemisphere will cause changes in the frequency, okay? As you move along the contralateral side, if you come from more contralateral side, you will change the frequency towards higher firing rate. And if you come from the ipsilateral side, you will cause a decrease in the firing rate. Okay? So the theory, one sec. So the theory is that we have now two ITD channels which are looking at the different hemispheres. These are called hemispheric ITDs, which is a completely different concept of how to extract these ITDs from the different sides of the world. Okay? And here there's some kind of model, a computational model that extracts the information, or in this case, it's the visual information from the barn owl encoding at high frequencies versus the gerbil encoding at 500 hertz. And the visual information is beautifully here if you use this ITD, hemispheric ITDs, rather than the absolute firing rate of the neurons in a spatial map. So you have a question, and then we'll take a break.
And is this dependent on the electrode? Like where the slope is?
No, so we don't have evidence for this a lot. Okay? Great. This is just a theory, this needs to be proven. Okay, last but not least, so this is a summary where we are. Yeah, one last thing before we go to the next, before we take a break. So information from level differences and time differences from the different types send their axons to the inferior colliculus. Inferior colliculus has a central and an external inferior colliculus. Here, these neurons here send their axons to true ITDs in ICX. Okay, so actually the neurons I showed you before are in ICX. Okay, these are the true ITD neurons. This is a little bit complicated stuff. Not super trivial. Whoop. So the ITD sends to ICX where there's true ITD neurons. And this one sends axons to a region in mammals called the superior colliculus, or in the birds it's called the optic tectum. And here is where these true ITDs send their axons, and this is where information from auditory and visual information converge, one on one. Okay? So an animal also has an information where something is in space during daytime in the visual system. Okay, the barn owl is so good that it can hunt at night only based on the map of ITDs, based on the different. But generally, if you look at the optic tectum, it has both information. Also, it can hunt at day, of course, and this is where both information converge. And in fact, visual information overrides and can be stronger than the auditory information. Okay? Great. So all this you need to know, all these tonotopic maps in colliculus, in the cochlear nucleus, and ICC, and each one is tuned to an ITD, but it changes with the frequencies, and they send to higher centers when there's true ITD, etc. All of this you need to know. Great stuff. And last, then we're going to take a 15-minute break, maybe okay, let's do a 15-minute break for 14 minutes. 4:10 we come back to the last talk. הדקה עליכם.
לב, השלמי דבר עליהם. האמת זה נורא נהדר. זהו, יכול להיות שלא נצטרך את הרבה דברים. אנחנו לא עושים אחרי פורום הזה. שוב, מה שנעשה, איך להריץ את זה, זה outside shape, הרשם השם. אם איך אני מדמיין את זה, עכשיו לא עושים. פשוט כבר כל הזמן. ואז מחזיר את זה.
לגמרי כסף. משלמים לנו פה לפי שעה. מה?
אם יש כזה שני גלים שהם בתדירויות שונות, אז כאילו, שזה אחד, זה שני משהו. אז אם הם מגיבים לשלב שהוא מגיע לאמפליטודה כזו בגלל, אז זה יהיה זמנים שונים.
לא, הם מגיבים בפיק של התדר.
אוקיי, אז, אבל אני אגיע לפיק של התדר והם בזמנים שונים, אם התדירות שונות. אם הם מניבים הם כן באותה נקודה. כי אם הנוירון מגיב כאן וכאן...
וניורון אחד יגיב כאן, ניורון אחר יגיב כאן.
סבבה.
בקוקליה, אוקיי? ניורונים מסוימים מגיבים לפריקוונצי הזה, זה על בסיס הקוקליה.
אוקיי.
אבל הם יגיבו, הוא יגיב פה, הוא יגיב פה, הוא יגיב בפיק של התדר, לפעמים הוא יפספס, ואז כל האוכלוסייה מקודדת את האינפורמציה הזאת. וזה סופר מדויק, תמיד, בפיק של התדר. אוקיי? עכשיו, אם הניורון מתחיל את הפעילות שלו בקוקליה בזמן אפס. זמן אפס של הנוירון הזה זה פה, וזמן אפס של הנוירון בקוקליה הוא פה. השני הוא פה. והנוירון שם הוא מאחד, הוא קואינסידנס דטקטור של הנוירונים עצמם. טוב. הנה, אני זו. חבר'ה, הדקה שאתם נותנים לי כבר הולכת לא עובדת. Okay, the third lecture on the auditory system, actually the first one if we consider the vestibular system, another one is a little bit about plasticity of the system. This is a topic that is close to my heart, and if we have some time, although I doubt it, I will give you some of the stuff that we are doing, but don't think we'll get to that. Okay, anyway. So the barn owl, we're going to start with the barn owl, which is quite amazing in locating an object in space based on sounds and vision itself. Okay, so let's say you can do an experiment with an owl and a hungry owl, and give him a click somewhere in space, and he will move his head to the specific position. You can do it at night based on sounds, and you can do it with visual stimuli. And when you do that, okay, let's say we put the sound source at 0, 0 in elevation, 0 in the horizontal plane. Okay, let's look at left and right particularly, not in the elevation so much. We didn't really talk about that. You will see that the responses to the auditory, this is bioassay, this is the behavioral assay. So this is where the owl took his head, and he's spot on. Okay, roughly on average. This is there may be different owls of the same owl, and how different trials he moves its head relative to 0 of the target. And you can see that they're pretty good in sounds, and they're pretty good with vision, maybe even a little better with vision. Now, one experiment that you can do with these barn owls, another animal, is to fool the system. What you can do is you can raise small chicks with prisms on their eyes, such that the visual world is tilted by, in this case, 23 degrees. So when you show a barn owl or an animal with these prisms, let's say a stimulus that's coming from the left side by 23 degrees, he thinks that it's on the center of the screen. Okay, so you can use different glasses, different prisms, and you can grow these animals with different prisms, so their auditory visual world is shifted. It goes up, down, right or left, etc. Very easy to play with them. And when you do that, initially, or one day after you implant one of these prisms on these poor owls, when you click a target, they will miss it by exactly the same amount visually of the prism specification. In this case, again, about 23 degrees to the left, right. In this case. Okay? But when you do for the same owl with the prisms, you now ask it in complete darkness to identify the location in space, he will move his head very accurately, based on sounds alone.
Would the prisms all have the result already rolled up, or?
No, so this is in young animals. Okay? We'll talk about the age issue. So in a young animal, in this case the brain is highly plastic, you put the prisms on, after a day he makes the mistakes based on the visual system, he's not used to the new world as of yet. Okay? However, a month later, you can see that when you test the animal in the auditory cue, the visual cue is the same because he still has the prism, he will now behaviorally readjust the input from the sounds to the location of the visual space. This is remarkable plasticity of this animal, that its sound localization is highly plastic. Okay? And when you take off the prisms immediately, and now the world is tilted back to as it used to be, or in the normal conditions, you can see that the animal will now easily locate the visual stimuli spot on. But if you do it in complete darkness, he's now used to the new world that he saw in the last 42 days. And therefore, we have a system with great plasticity of the auditory system to get used to locating sound and space.
What about blind owls? Blind owls.
Blind owls will use their auditory system.
So it is just a track, can develop using the both systems that is just
No, so the auditory system develops separately, and the visual system develops separately, but they converge in the superior colliculus or optic tectum, as I showed you in the last slide. Okay, so there is higher brain information that gets both inputs and eventually decides where the object is. So the decision center is affected by both visual and auditory. What happens if you're blind or deaf, then you probably use only one system. In this case, the animal was raised initially as a young animal. The initial development of the brain was based on both of these cues, at least decision. And what you can see is that the auditory system is capable of retuning itself completely based on information from the visual system, which is dominating in this case. Okay? Yes? What? Yes, initially they missed the target. Then they missed the target based on the visual cues. Okay?
So the visual field shifts.
The visual cues shift immediately because of the prism.
The stimulus is still on zero.
The stimulus, in this case, is on zero, and they will think it's on the right-hand side. And if they would need to go to the animal to hunt, they will miss it. But with time, they learn to correct themselves. Okay, so they learn. If they hear something from 23 degrees, so to speak, they will go straight because they know it's coming from the front. So they will they will know how to go to the right target, and the auditory cues will adjust themselves to the right target. Okay? Great. Okay, this is a very powerful model of plasticity used for many years in the barn owl. So not only the barn owl is extremely useful for understanding brain computations and how you transform ITDs into a map in space, but it is also a very beautiful model of plasticity. If you look at the coordinates or the neurons in the inferior colliculus, you find neural correlates of this plasticity. So normally, we recorded, like you saw before, these ITDs in a normal animal, around plus minus 50 microsecond, with some skewness to the right hand side, but nevertheless. And neurons in the superior colliculus, in mammals, but in the birds in the optic tectum, will show convergence in the responses to auditory and visual stimuli. Okay? And what will happen with the prisms is that we moved the visual space by 23 degrees. And what we expect is that neurons in the ICX will now shift their ITDs to the right direction. And indeed, when you do recording in these animals that were rare with prisms, you see shifts in their ITDs. Okay? So there are neural correlates of this plasticity as well. And you can see the neural correlate if you do it, if you put left prisms, so they're shifting by plus 50 microseconds, in their ITDs. If you do the right prisms, they will shift by minus 50 microseconds, which is roughly the angle of 23 degrees. Okay, so we have both behavioral, very strong correlates, and neural correlates of this plasticity. And in fact, we also know the mechanism in this animal, which is axonal sprouting from the neurons in the ICX to the from neurons in the ICC to the ICX, where it codes the ITDs. Okay, so normally, if you inject here neurons in the ICC, which is, as you recall, organized tonotopically, they will also send information to the ICX, okay? In this case, based on some on the ITDs. But if you do this in a learned animal, you see a wide spreading of their axons, and this is done during development. So basically, they expand the range of information that they send to the higher brain center, And in fact, if you then remove the prisms, there's a very elegant mechanism of shutting down this region and leaving only this region intact. So in a young animal that was raised initially normal and then to twist his visual world, the auditory visual localization is changing to allow this new accommodation, and he can use, so to speak, this axonal localization or this axonal localization at will. Okay, this doesn't happen instantaneously, but this plasticity takes time until it happens. This leads us to these manipulations that you do in adult barn owls. So we expect changes in the MSO of about 60 microseconds based on this shift in the prisms. So you change the prisms and you expect the auditory system to accommodate by 60 microseconds IPV. And in fact, as I just showed you in the last slide, when you do it in an animal which is very young, this is the time when they open their eyes, and this is the time when they start to fly. Okay? They start to fly here, and this is when they reach sexual maturity. Okay? So at this point in time, after 200 days, they're considered completely adult in terms of the experimental age or so. And you see these nice changes in ITD in very young animals. When you do it in a sexually mature animal, you see a little bit of change. If you do it in a 250-day old animal, you see nothing. And if you do it in a barn owl, which is over a year old, it cannot shift at all. It's auditory sound localization system. Okay, so the conclusion from this is that adult animals, adult brains cannot change their auditory system. However, adult animals can change. And they can change if they were reared as young animals with the prism. So if you do this shift in the young animals, okay, if you take these animals that learned this shift when they were teenagers, when they were young, and you test them again, the same animal again when they're adults, they are able to shift. Okay, so this means that there is some kind of plasticity that occurs early on during development that allows them now to make the shift. And then again, in this case, it's a little bit lower than the maximum shift that is expected, but nevertheless, these adult animals that were rare during development with the prisms can shift their sound localization system, unlike normal adult animals.
How do you call them not to shift before you want they do it?
What do you mean?
But, I mean, how do you say they shifted only now and not?
No, they shifted when they were young, and then they returned to normal.
Oh, they shift back?
Oh yeah, that's what I showed you in the
Oh.
first slide. Sorry.
Okay.
Well, actually they shift back, yeah. I didn't show you that. Shift back. You're right. You are correct. Okay, so one thing is that if they shift back, they can, reinitiate this event from their teenage years. And also, if you do it in small increments, rather than shifting the whole visual world by 23 degrees, but shifting it initially by 10 degrees, so this is the relative microsecond. So by 6 degrees, and then 11 degrees, and then 17 degrees. So you do it gradually. Okay, so you change the prism every several days. They can adjust, the system can adjust itself. But if the change is too big, like the world is changing by 23 degrees instantaneously, an adult animal cannot shift the auditory system. And yeah, so after you do that, they can return back to normal, they shift back, and then after they shift back, they can do the shift in one jump. Okay? So this tells us that the auditory system is plastic. It's extremely plastic in young age, and early development has a very major influence on the auditory system in the adult animal. Okay. So this one very beautiful neurobiological story about the barn owl, how it localizes sound in space, how it encodes information with these ITDs, and how plastic the system is. So now we can move back to the auditory system of the mammalian nervous system. So if you look during development and ask what are the perceptual skills that the auditory system is capable of, you see that this changes gradually, and it takes years until we learn. Okay? Different systems of our brain develop at different rates. So to get full maturity of the auditory system, it takes about 10 years of age. Most of the data that we have comes from human about perceptual information. So very early on, in infants, they can do frequency resolution, detect gaps, things of that sort. But things like AM detection, excuse me?
What do you mean by detect gaps?
So you can play a sound which has gaps in it. Okay? And the experimental animal needs to report the gap. And if you make the gap very, very short, it's hard to notice that there was a gap. Okay, so there are different issues here. Okay, we talked about azimuthal discrimination. Okay, how the animals can locate in space. So if a mother calls her infant, he can locate his head with some accuracy. Actually, this is the next graph, I think. Yeah, so this is the mean audible angle. Okay, so in the first few months of the life of the baby, first year, they're able to get better and better at with the resolution of where the sound is coming from. But this ability, which is about, like we talked about 1% in adults, takes quite a bit of time to develop, and this is actually one of the fastest perceptual abilities of the auditory system to develop. Things like AM detection, okay, amplitude modulation, which has to do with the envelope of the sound, is something that appears, the quality of it appears or refines later in life. And the last thing is perceptual learning.
What's the formal backward masking?
Informational masking, backward masking. I don't know about the backward masking and information masking, but generally masking tests are ones that you play a sound in the back, okay? You have to detect a sound on top of it. Okay, we'll see a masking. What exactly is the different test here? I don't remember. The main idea of this slide is just that it takes years for the system to develop. This is an example from the space localization in space, because you now know everything that there is to know about space localization. Jeffrey's model and the new model, so this takes time to develop. Another examples are, this is what? Thresholds. So you can play a sound at different intensities, at different dB SPLs. Okay, our minimum, theoretical minimum is 0, right? We started to hear things at 10, 15 in reality. So this would be a curve of a dot. If you give a stimulus of 10 milliseconds, at 500 hertz, it will be about 20, 25 dB. Okay, dB SPL. If you make the sound longer, we can detect it at lower sound intensity. So this would be the improvement between one factor of the stimulus duration. Infants are much less, they can't hear such fine information, so their threshold is quite high, about 50 or about 50 dB. But if you look at their threshold at 100 millisecond tone, it will go down to 35 dB. So the improvement of the delta is said to be larger in infants than it is in adults, but the absolute values of intensity discrimination thresholds are not as good in infants and develops in adults. If you look at children at 6 to 7 years old, this improves quite substantially. This now in a higher frequency in this case, and you can see they're not as good as adults, but still the improvement is better, etc. Okay, so this is again yet another example of changes. This is a masking task. So they're masked with this is not the masking text, I think. This is just the intensity. Sorry. So they have to say whether the two tones were the same intensity. Okay, you have a standard tone and the target tone, and if you play it at the difference between the two sounds is 0. It's impossible to tell, of course, so your chance level. But those are quite good. So if you change just a few dBs of the two tones, those get excellent very fast. So the resolution is very good in a two-tone discrimination task. Okay, not absolutely, not in absolute values. And in children, the psychometric curve is much more shallow. Okay, so they're not as crisp in that sense. Of course, if you do a very 10 dB or 12 dB difference between the doublets that you play, the children can do it just as well. Yeah.
So basically it means that small children when playing an instrument, they have not disability, but
oh yeah. You cannot be a Beethoven at 5-year-old. You can start.
But there was a Mozart.
Yeah. So there are geniuses and exceptional differences, but a normal child on the average in the population will have a lower resolution than an adult on average. Okay, yes, so experts and extraordinary.
There's no argument for Russian parents.
They start at what age?
All musicians, Russian
What?
don't know musicians.
At 5. Okay, you can start at 5. And it means that this is actually related to this. So this has a clinical impact. This is just to tell you that if this is a paper just showing, looking at deaf people, when the deafness was identified over 6 months of age or earlier than 6 months of age. And if the deafness was identified early on, they start to give intervention treatments to the deaf kids in this case. And in all parameters that these kids were tested in adulthood, they were better if their deafness was identified very early on. So if intervention starts early and treatment starts early, it has a very dramatic impact on how these, in this case, children, in terms of cognitive abilities, language advantages, etc. Okay?
When you say that, it assumes that both are from birth?
Yes.
Not something that develops.
No. These are all congenitally deaf, and okay, so they're completely deaf, and the parents identify, the doctors identify this later on, and this just comes to tell you that how important, again, all these slides, is that the auditory system is not fully mature during development. It takes years to develop, and the early months in this case are very critical. Okay? All the analysis that I showed you until now shows you that the immature perception of the kids is different in the auditory systems compared to adults. But it's quite difficult to say experimentally whether this comes from a sensory deficit, if you will, or a cognitive deficit. Okay? So we don't know whether, it's the synapses of the hair cells and the spiral ganglion cells, they're not doing their job yet, or whether the cognitive development of the animal are not fully developed yet, and they don't completely understand the task exactly as the adults do, etc. So this has to be taken with a grain of salt because probably it's both sensory deficits as well as cognitive deficits. Okay. But so there is in this review there is just an example that there is evidence that the listening strategy of children are different than in adults. This is a case of detecting, I think, a tone when it is presented in a high frequency or in low frequency, and the ability of the adults and the kids in terms of frequency resolution in this case, in this specific task is the same, but their attention span is different. So adults will listen mostly to the expected tone, while the children will have a wider span of attention and not focus, if you will. And this is attributed to a cognitive difference between the young and the adults, etc. Okay, but nevertheless, this is a nice prelude to the story of the development is important, etc. Okay, the development is important, critically shaping how the adult brain will hear, will cope with sound. This is beautifully exemplified in the barn owl, but also we have strong evidence in human psychophysics and behavioral studies on how this develops. We actually have very little besides the barn owl, which is beautiful, no biological story. We have little information, no biological information about animals, and if we want to understand fully the mechanism, there is no way, other way that we know of is to use the animal models to go into the brain and study the brain. Okay, so the question is now, where does plasticity occur? You already saw, or I hinted, that there are nice changes, interesting changes in inferior colliculus, sending their axon differentially to the ICX in the barn owl. There are actually most of what we know about changes in hearing comes from bad changes, if you will, or damage to the hair cells, because these cannot renew. This is actually a very severe problem in society in general, hearing loss, because people live longer years, hair cells are not getting younger, and they cannot renew, so this becomes a very serious problem of the population. And also there is lots of examples of environmental noise, acoustic noise, which causes harm to the health. This is actually very common in workplaces. So, the how do you call it in English? Welfare of the workers or something like that. This is something which is tightly regulated. Noises in work environments and things like that. People working with the noisy environments will have protection, but anyway, so this is the common thought is that anything under 80 dB is safe to be in the environment is safe. Things which are 120 dB or over are damaging hair cells and you cannot renew. There's actually a nice, when I was preparing this talk, there's a nice perspective by Jos Egermont with all kinds of new theories that, so there's called temporal noise deficit, so hearing deficit, and permanent hearing deficit. Okay, so it's clear that you can, you screw up your hair cells that there's no turning back. At least now, in 2016, many researchers are working on regeneration of hair cells, and he has some kind of theories about temporal hearing loss, which is very common in society, and how it affects our abilities to hear later on. Okay? Again, especially for young children, but not all. Yes? You have a question? Depends on, you know, how protected it is, but generally the protection should be, you know, decrease the sound intensity to save time. Should be no problem. Okay, so lots of damage issues here. We did see nice examples of inferior folliculus in Barnowel, but now we want to jump a little bit ahead of the train because starting Wednesday, we're not going to talk about, it's all about the auditory cortex. It's very sad. I worked the whole week to prepare this.
Question, could you also upload the PowerPoint?
Yes, I will do it today. Okay. They're actually ready. Wow, that's very sad, huh? What? Very sad, huh? Okay, I'll leave it for next year, I think. I don't know what to say. Okay. So, I think, yeah, that's sad, but that's nice. Okay. So, auditory cortex. You will start hearing about what does auditory cortex do on Wednesday with Eddie. One thing that is prevalent in the literature about auditory cortex is that it is a highly plastic place in learning, and when we learn to hear different things, you know, I'm not even talking about musicians, etc., but even just regular exposure and experiences in life have very clear and very clear traces of the learning in the auditory cortex. Okay, so I wanted to talk about all of these things, which I will not. And maybe just a teaser because we have 2 minutes. So everything I wanted to tell you about is actually learning to differentiate between tones and perceptual learning. How does one become an expert in differentiating very fine sounds? Okay, but then so we have a few projects on that. I did not talk about any of the projects, my projects here, but there's one great example of what's recently become quite interesting, is that mothers, after they give birth, they become sensitive to the cry of their babies. So the babies have specific sounds where they cry to the mother. And it appears that the mother is very sensitive to these sounds. Not only the sounds, but also the smells. My lab works on the vocalizations of the babies, the baby cries, and the smells of the babies. This is just an example of a pup retrieval test. Did you see this by me? No? So this is one of them is, I told you who is the mother. This is actually an exam. Okay, so for the lack of time, this is the exam. One of them is a mother, one of them is a virgin, her sister, which never saw a pup in her life, and one is an aunt. One is, I don't remember. Yeah, an aunt, her aunt that lived with her together and learned how to care for the pups. So you can see this is the mother. Okay, we steal the pups and we put them in the cage, and she will bring them in after 5-10 seconds, move them in. This is her sister, which never saw pups in her life. She will interact with them, smell them, hear them. They're crying, mommy, 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 in ultrasound. You can't hear them, and she will never bring anyone back. And this is the same one like that, but after she spent a few days with the mother, so the mother can teach her how to care for the baby. Anyway, it's a very robust behavior. Very robust behavior. I won't exhaust you. Just one thing. So if you record from the auditory cortex of the mothers, you see that their spiking reliability in the auditory cortex to the pup calls is very strict. The spikes are very synchronized, and the neurons will spike at the onset of specific syllables of the pop chords. This is specific to the pop chords and not other ultrasonic vocalizations like the father calling. Okay, the father is.
The tone is not necessarily related to what they hear or not, because the one that actually interacts with them but doesn't bring them back, it's not necessarily related to what she hears, because she interacts with them.
She interacts with them, but there is no full feedback of the experience. So the full experience is very important. If you just passively play sounds to an animal which doesn't care about these sounds, it doesn't cause plasticity in the voice. But if there is a behavioral meaning to that, you do see traces of plasticity in those voices. So what I wanted to tell you, and we will finish with that, is that there's a very nice trace of plasticity in the auditory cortex of the mother. You can actually see it also in the aunt that learn together with the mother, and this is due to differences in the excitation and inhibition balance in the cortex due to some oxytocin, which is one of the most fancy new trends in neuroscience. Oxytocin is the neurohormone that causes these changes in balance of excitation and inhibition. Okay, so I'm going to upload the talks without the real plasticity part, and I will see you on what? You have a nice one. That's very sad. קשה להשוות אחד לאחד, לא הייתי אומר הרבה יותר, אלא הרבה יותר. כשאתה מסתכל על ויז'ואל קורס, אז יש את הרטינה, MGM, טוב, אודיטור קורטקס הולך בכמה דברים. אני חושב שבמובן הזה יש אנשים שטוענים שאודיטור קורטקס הוא טיפה יותר גבוה מ-B1. כן, כל שיותר גבוה אתה מצפה למשהו טיפה יותר פלסטי. זה החוקס, למרות שאין הרבה עבודות שעוקבות בצורה מדויקת הפלסטית בכל התאמה.
לא, אבל זה משהו שקורה במנגנונים עקביים, פשוט בגלל שהקלט שהוא מקבל הוא שונה, ולכן הפלסטיות באה לידי ביטוי.
אני חושב שהקלט שהוא מקבל הוא קצת שונה, הוא יותר גבוה בהיררכיה, מוויז'ואל קורטקס. במובן הזה, הפקטורי קורטקס הוא בלי טלמוס בכלל, אוקיי? הוא מקבל ישר אינפוט, אבל יש המון אינפוט, וגם שם, לפחות המחשבה היא שיש הרבה פלסטיות. אז אני חושב שכן יש הבדל בפלסטיות בין הקורטקסים השונים. אני חושב פשוט שההשפעה היא קצת קשה, לא כל כך טריוויאלית. מה?